Well, hello, Jack and Dave Wells. Welcome to the Career Pathways podcast.
Hi there.
Thanks for having us.
All right. For our listeners, can you tell Jason and I kind of where you guys are zooming in from?
Well, I live in Florida now, and so that's where all the old people go and play pickleball. So we're here. We moved here about 7 years ago from Michigan, where Jack was born and raised, and so it's been very, very hot. So that's where I'm calling from, Bonita Springs, Florida, right here.
Yeah, and I'm calling from Portland, Oregon. I've been out here for about 10 years. So I get to see my dad here in Florida a few times a year, handful of times.
I don't know.
A good deal. We titled this podcast, "So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star," and so it was all about talking about having a career in music, a professional career in music. And I thought, Jack, I'm obviously, full disclosure that I am the uncle and brother-in-law of these two Wells on the Zoom call. So I kind of know your life story in a lot of ways, and wanted to start with you as far as even before music. What was interesting is that you really had your first career, and it was in acting. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think as far as I can remember, my dad's always been playing, movies and plays and musicals and stuff within the house. So I don't know exactly when the bug hit or anything for acting, but I do know that I was caught like imitating people a lot as a kid. And I remember like my mom walked in on me in the bathroom, and I was like taping up my face to look like Jim Carrey to try to get the eyebrow movements down that he was doing in like Ace Ventura. So I think it was kind of just part of me forever. And then we like heard about this competition, cut to, it was like a 2,000 kids all in, I think it was in Florida or something. It's called like AMTC American.
Yeah, it was in Chicago.
Yeah.
And, how we got there is I saw Jack, some things around Jack where he was pretty good imitating people, and he was good. He could do things with his voices. He still can. And he just had this ability to just sort of entertain. So I was just sitting at home. I was ill from some stupid reason. I saw this TV commercial for this organization called AMTC, and I didn't know what it was, but it was in Chicago, where in essence what they do is they hook up potential actors and mostly actors with agents in California and that. And so Jack competed, did extremely well. He won a few of the different, they had like 8 or 10 different types of competitions within that. And as a result of that, he got an agent. A couple agents were actually interested in LA, and also one in Chicago. And that sort of started out his acting thing.
Yeah. So then.
So what age was that? How old were you?
Like 12?
Yeah.
12?
Yeah.
12.
And 12 years old and you had an agent.
Yeah. Yeah. Want to hear something kind of funny? So it was also a modeling thing too. So it was acting and modeling, and Jack's 12 years old. What are you going to do? But they always wanted to make everybody take off their shirt to see their upper body, and he's 12 years old. And I was like, come on, this is kind of strange here.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
No?
My story about that is, I placed in like basically every category that I did, except for the bathing suit walk. So I wasn't cut out for that.
Good.
I remember like after that
Well, then after you win this competition, ultimately you and your mom ended up in LA, right?
Yeah, we were living on and off again in LA for a while, and it was amazing. I mean, as a young kid, like I'm hanging out with Mitchell Musso from Hannah Montana, Josh Hutcherson from Hunger Games. I'm like living this kind of alternate universe where I'm like
Yeah.
going to school and but also auditioning at Warner Brothers. And we got close, but it was mostly like most of my success with acting happened regionally, more in the Midwest, and I had more success like with commercials and short films and stuff like that out in the Midwest. But LA was going through a weird change. It was like 2012, like the rise of reality television and stuff. So there just wasn't a lot of like, it was the same thing that's happening right now with the strikes, but there's just wasn't a lot of stuff going on. And I fell in love with music then. That's kind of when things started changing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there was the reason why we sent Jack there. We did it in little chunks of time. They used to have a thing. I don't even know they have it anymore called pilots.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
Yeah.
so pilot season was when all these actors from all over the country would come in to LA and try to hopefully get casted for a pilot. And Jack was close a few times, but he didn't get it. And so you meet some of these top young actors like Josh Hutcherson. He was just starting off his career. He was filming that movie with Will Ferrell about soccer. I can't remember the name of it at the time, but he
Kicking
was
and Screaming.
He was Jack's brother.
Yeah.
A couple years younger than Jack, and he would come over all the time, and my wife Susan would give him cookies, and he was trying to learn how to play the guitar, and he was a really good kid. He ended up being quite a star. But you see, it's kind of overwhelming because you see people, famous people, auditioning, and you see them at the casting places, and so yeah, so we gave that a go for a couple of years, but then we said maybe we just see if we can do it in Michigan because it gets quite expensive.
Yeah. Hey, Jack, at a young age like that, it seems acting is kind of trying to break into acting seems so like 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 insecure, and you got all these highs and lows, and
Mhm.
all that auditioning. I mean, did that have an impact on you?
I think there's a huge the thing that I learned the most about that is like in that age was that, it's rejection.
Yeah.
You just learn very quickly that you're likely not going to get the part. I mean, more so than like unless you become established and you have like a repertoire, like you're likely going to get rejected. And I think at the same time I was doing all this, I was all the while taking improv classes, improv comedy. And I feel like to this day, I use those principles for interviewing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically anything that like it's just about you do not negate. You're always looking to further the conversation. So you're listening, active listening, yes, and you're just always agreeable. And I think that's kind of like with acting in those those auditions, you're kind of like learning how to read the room and
Yeah.
read how like it's pretty intense. You have like someone on the other end reading you like, and then the ghost said, "I don't like you," and you're supposed to emotionally give them something. So
Right.
you
Right.
you're kind of in the throes of a lot of unique experiences, and it's definitely taught me how to be a better interview and a better, I don't know, accepting rejection and realizing that's just part of life.
Yeah, and I would
You know,
also say that this thing about rejection is really hard on a 12 or 13-year-old kid at 14.
oh
I
yeah,
mean, if you're a sensitive kid and you're getting rejected all the time, you're crying, you're getting depressed. But as much as Jack got rejected quite often, I think it made him better down the road
Yeah.
because he grew like a thicker skin, and then he didn't have such unrealistic expectations about things. So if he got rejected, he kind of, all right, I know, but whatever. But this is really hard on young guys, young girls. Getting rejected can devastate them.
Well, so then you come back to Michigan, and how did the transition go to kind of now say, okay, now where I want to put my voice is in music, and kind of put acting, on the back shelf.
yeah. It's kind of an interesting swaparoo what happened there.
Yeah.
By the time I was like 17, I was still going to LA every once in a while, and I did the improv comedy classes at the Groundlings there. But like while I was hanging out there, I kind of came up with like I almost call it like my secular friend, but it's just my friend who wasn't an actor that was living in the complex that I was living.
Right.
And he was like, his dad was like in a metal band called Lizzie Borden in the 80s. And so they had this like crazy huge recording studio out in Studio City that we'd go out to. And I started like recording music with him and just kind of learning how to get back on drums. I mean, I played drums a little bit as a kid. I played guitar a little bit, but I like until I started doing that and my friends back in my, middle school, I just kind of started playing with people. And that just kind of naturally started happening. And it kind of, I was like, oh, this is something I really love. And I was just destroying my voice because I didn't know how to sing.
Oh, yeah,
And
right.
so by the time I was like 18, I had like ripped my vocal cords apart, trying to be in punk bands, trying to sound like Blink 182 and Tom DeLonge and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I had to go through like this like therapy, and it like my voice went up like 3 octaves. And so now my voice is super high, like
Yeah.
comparatively to where it was. And I think I just, in that process of like changing, kind of just being influenced by the music and then starting to be playing. And then I started playing shows because I just kind of was like, this is way faster gratification.
Yeah.
And also just like, I felt even more natural in it than I did with acting. Like, even though acting kind of came second nature,
Right.
it's like this started to like really was like infiltrate my creative mind. So I dove in.
I want to fill in one of those gaps
Yeah.
when he came in back from LA, and he got in a few independent films in Michigan and Canada. He did fine. I mean, it wasn't like he made a ton of money, but he did fine, and it
Mhm.
helped him be able to act in front of a camera because he really didn't get to do a lot of long acting, memorize the scripts, and he did well. But I also, it was around 13 or 14 when like Jack's talking about that punk band. Jack started to realize, and we didn't know he had it. He didn't know he had it, that he can write songs. Okay. And so he started writing songs when he was 13 or 14. And a few, actually have the CD on a couple of them, and they were quite good. So I didn't ever think I ever really thought that was an avenue for him about songwriting. I know he liked to play drums and guitar, and he was quite good at both. But the songwriting ability started to come out, Jack, at around 13, 14.
Yeah, my timeline is so messed. I can't even
Yeah.
tell like when that all started.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, you know one thing, as far as one of the things, and it's one of those mistakes I made that I'm going to have to confess here on the podcast that Jack, I don't even know, you might have been just a baby, but before Sandy and I were parents, we came down to Atlanta to visit your mom and dad and Dave and thought what a great Christmas gift to give young Dave a pair of drums. And I remember your mom calling me up and just cursing me. It was like, it's like,
yeah,
it's just like why don't you just give him a loaded gun or something,
I know, honestly, yeah.
he he took to it, and I don't you don't have to comment on your brother's musical abilities, but I guess there was a lot of noise being made.
Well,
No, yeah.
Dave, he actually didn't play drums very long. Okay, it was very short lived, and we once we moved back to Michigan, we got him into guitar, but then
Yeah.
Jack started playing drums on his own at 4 years old. We gave Jack, or 4 or 5 years old, gave him drum lessons. So Jack inherited the drums, but we also had a basement. Okay,
Yes.
so that helped that pretty well.
So then you're kind of in music, and then if you went to went to college,
Mhm.
and you were committed to earning a degree. Was that kind of the promise with your parents as far as to get a degree and then take your career wherever it goes at that point?
No, not really. My
Okay.
dad was completely on board with me going back to LA and pursuing like improv because I got
Okay.
invited to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
some adult classes at the Groundlings, and he was supportive of any real direction really that I wanted to go. But this is at the time when I met my now wife,
Mhm.
and I felt that I was kind of like falling in love with her, and I was like, I think I want to go to school and kind of have that experience. My high school and junior high was kind of all over the place, and I was like, maybe some like just, this would be good for me. And I think, I mean, Mel had a lot to do with, my wife had a lot to do with it. And I just wasn't necessarily ready, I don't think, to go to LA on my
Yeah.
own. So that's kind of what decided it. I only really applied to like a couple of colleges just because I was pretty sure I was going to go to LA.
We
Yeah.
were very fortunate because I was looking because to pay LA out of state tuition for college, I
Yeah.
said, I'm not so sure, but maybe we get him into a community college while he's pursuing other things. And we were going there. We were getting close to that was going to happen. And then we also something happened because of Mel, of course, Melissa. Uh, he said I got to apply to some colleges here in Michigan. I don't know. I'm sure Mel had a lot to do with it. And we applied to, I think it was Michigan State. Was that the only one you applied to?
I think that's the only one I applied to.
Yeah.
There you
And
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
there you go. And then they both went off, and Jack did not go to LA, but Mel and Jack were making music together because she's got one of the probably the most beautiful voices in music. She's absolutely incredible. So they ended up forming their own band, actually back in high school. When they started, the first band was called Sunny Side Up, little Sunny Side Up, and then they ended up changing a little later to those Willows back in college, right? Does that sound right?
Yep.
So those Willows, even in the prior name, that's you've had that since high school.
It kind of came into play more in like sophomore year of college.
Oh, okay, got it.
And
Yeah.
it was with a different like crew, and we were making
Mhm.
like way more. Whereas like Sunny Side Up was like very folk singer songwriter. We started making it more rock and psychedelic with like one group, but then we just kept the name and kind of went back to our folkier roots
Yeah.
by senior year. And yeah, the name just stuck because we just, I don't know, it's hard to find a name that doesn't exist anywhere, and that name
Yeah.
does not. So it was easy to
Yeah.
Google. We
Yeah.
had all the accounts. At the rise of social media, it was nice to have like an account that was just Instagram.com/those willows.
Yeah. Yeah. What for your music, what kind of were your influences, and kind of how would you describe those Willows?
Yeah, it's always been a little bit challenging to like pinpoint exactly where we fit and everything. But growing up, I always, when my dad would play the Beach Boys, I was really gravitated towards them, the Beatles. And then as I got to college, I started taking things from like where, and then I got into like pop punk. So I was like in Green Day, Blink-182, Fall Out Boy, like that rise. And then there was like a gap that happened where it was like all of a sudden Arctic Monkeys came out, and they were playing with this idea of like kind of pop punk, but also like British, unique lyricism, unique melody. It was just different than what I was used to. And then there's Radiohead. So there was like these two avenues. And then I kind of like hit Animal Collective, and then MGMT, and then then there was like Passion Pit, and then it went to Fleet Foxes, Grizzly Bear, Beach House. And so like they're in Vampire Weekend. And then like this kind of opened up a huge bubble when I got to college. 2008 was like the boom of like
Yeah.
indie rock.
Yeah.
And like the Shins, whatever. I mean, there was just so many bands that were coming out right then, and those bands just took over my life. So I think everything about their songwriting and trying to capture authenticity of their own writing and their own melody making, like that sounded like nothing else, is really what inspired me to like take those Willows, have unique arrangements that were my own, songs that couldn't be written by someone else,
Yeah.
like inherently have our own sound. And I think that's our sound kind of hit some like Motowny stuff. It kind of hit some doo-woppy stuff, but also a little rock, a little folk. It's kind of all over the place, but it also sounds very cohesive. So I'm not sure.
And we'll kind of transition to talk about your music career, but a question that, as a musician in the business side of music, is there pressure to kind of fit a genre? Like what you have is like kind of this wide range, expansive, kind of view in terms of all the different music that influences you, and then it comes out in your music where it doesn't neatly fit, this, this genre, that genre. You think back like in the old radio days, where radio was, it was all just, so segmented, and you had to
Yeah.
fit a certain style to be on a certain station.
Yeah, I think that rise I was talking about in 2008, where there's just so many different various types of music coming out, like even like the electronic music, rap, R&B, country, like all these different things were happening, but they're all happening under the umbrella of indie. And I think the rise of indie kind of allowed you to not have to fit any mold. You're just like an indie band.
Yeah.
And indie to me really just meant more like lo-fi, less mainstream. So like fidelity of actual tracks, not being these huge compressed pop songs that just sound squished and like big for no reason. The
Right.
song sounded more like recorded in your bedroom, or recorded throughout time and have a little bit more textures to them. They're just not like as polished. They're just unique to themselves. And I think that rise of indie music is why there isn't such like hard lines on genres anymore. I think, crossover is confusing now. Like rap is now mainstream, whereas when I was growing up, that wasn't considered mainstream. So it's kind of it. Kanye wasn't always a superstar. Yeah, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of crazy how that changed.
Yeah. So now here you are, Mel, and your degree in hand from, sitting on the red banks, in East Lansing, and you're thinking about what's next. Kind of what happened at that point to kind of get you, both of you guys, launched into a music career?
I think that there was starting to feel like, because of my dad and his like influence with licensing and getting our songs not just
Mhm.
in not just us playing live and trying to sell CDs, but they're starting to be used in like a commercial sense, made me think like, okay, if they're picking this up, there might be a little bit more something to it. And then Mel's brother was going to law school out in Eugene, Oregon, and so he's like, hey, just come visit for your spring break. And when we came to Portland, we just saw the amount of venues that were here, the amount of
Yeah.
music that was happening, and we were just like, it's a little bit more affordable than LA, and it's not so insane. And so we both, yeah, just simultaneously fell in love, and we're like, okay, Portland's perfect. It's a perfect docking point to get to Seattle, to get to San Francisco for touring. So you're just kind of on a West Coast dock, able to, if you do start touring, you could
Yeah.
easily, circulate. So that was kind of our thought, was like, okay, let's get down there and just start playing as much as possible. So when we got to Portland, within 3 days, we played our first show.
Now,
So
was that as a like a duo, or did you have backup at that time?
at that time, we were performing as a duo, and for like the
Yeah.
first 2 years we were here, we were touring as a duo. And honestly,
Mhm.
those times were like the easiest.
Yeah.
Probably should have just kept it that way, because it was like low overhead, can get better payout, obviously, and when it's just on us to do it. It was just like, okay, well, we get to travel for free, was what we were thinking, but there was unexpected.
Yeah. So what was the kind of well, I guess before I ask that, had you made a recording at this time? Like
Yeah, in 2012 we recorded a lot of Sunny Side Up stuff,
Mhm.
and then in 2012 we released Those Willows' first record, Rivertown,
Right.
and that was recorded in like Ferndale, Michigan. Over the course of, I would drive up there on like Tuesdays and Wednesdays throughout my senior year and record that album by myself in a studio with this guy who did it for free, which is
Yeah.
insane. And once we released that kind of like catapulted us to want to write in a band mindset, because I played all the drums on it and played all the auxiliary instruments, and was like, okay, I think we need to get a band. So it took us a long time to get to know people in Portland, though.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until I started playing drums in bands that we were able to find like players to be in our band and to route us out.
Oh, it's so then so now you have kind of a CD, and you're in Portland, you're getting yourself established. What what's the, at that point, the old school way that, like when I was uh, your age, and as far as for a musician would be playing clubs, some record, A&R guy from Columbia Records, come sitting in the back and, right, gets a note and just says, yeah, these kids got spunk and moxie, and I'm gonna sign them, and they're gonna be big stars, and that kind of trope. But how, what's the reality as far as when you're starting out trying to get, you know, get established, get published, get people to be able to listen to, hear and listen and buy your music. How's that all work?
Uh, I mean, it's consistently changing, right? I mean, the because of social media, everything's changed. I mean, TikTok now is like the main source of how people can get like go from 0 to a million pretty quickly. But the when I was 10 years ago when we were starting, it was like, yeah, it was a little bit more the old school, play a ton
Yeah,
of shows, get into the scene, build your base in town, try to book as many shows out of town to get keep, building up your base simultaneously using Instagram. But like really, I think it's a bit of luck. I think that people who experience like some of my friends who blew up, my good friend Brian was in this band called Hockey. They had one song, it got on a commercial, and then blah blah blah. Like cut to 2 years later, they're playing Letterman, and just they toured the world and fell apart within 2 years. And now and like
yeah,
no one knows about him. It's just like I don't know. I don't know. Some people weren't
right.
ever like meant to do it, but I think the way that people sustain it these days
Yeah,
is it's simply touring. I don't. You
yeah,
have to be playing like 2,000 people rooms or more. It's that like to make enough money to pay your band. It seems like the bigger you get, the harder it is. Like in a lot of ways, you'll see
yeah.
people like Stephen Malcolmus from Pavement, who's just like he lives in Portland. He's like, I can't tour that much, man. This tour van itself costs 10 grand a month.
Yeah, no,
Like it, I don't really know how people are doing it unless you're like in the top 2% of musicians who can just bank off Spotify and bank off.
Well, even
yeah,
those top 2%, like even those top 2%, like at this point with Spotify and stuff, a lot of times their payouts that they get from Spotify alone just goes to their record labels or people who own them
Mm-hmm.
because the way the contracts are set up, essentially it works like I don't know if this is how it was for contracts at the time, but when you do tours, you get all the money almost. Like you get like 70% of the money plus the other 30% goes to whoever. But when you like are on streaming services or selling stuff like that, that all goes to like the people who own you essentially as
Yeah,
Well,
opposed to
it's until you pay them off,
yeah.
until you
yeah.
pay off your record.
Well, but there's this thing that's a relatively recent phenomenon with
yeah,
artists. They call them 360 deals, okay? And basically, what you were just referring to, they take a chunk out of almost every revenue stream that the band can generate, and these are the record labels, okay? Because they're not, they can't quote sell records like anymore like they used
right.
to. So they have to look at a way, if they're going to underwrite your costs and maybe pay for some tours and things like that, they got to get more and more of your stuff. But what we decided with, I wanted, I, I wanted to have it where if there was an opportunity for Jack to make money, I wanted it to be through music licensing, okay, versus it being on Spotify. Or I didn't even know what Spotify was. So in 2009, actually, this would be 14 years ago,
Yeah.
he was able to get a couple of his songs from high school onto a music licensing company. It's very well known in LA called Crucial Music. And it's so we were pretty, I was real like very hopeful that we would get more and more licensing money. And so what I did is I literally spent days and weeks looking at every music licensing company in the world that would take non-exclusive songs non-exclusively. If
Hmm.
you sign exclusive, you could end up blowing up. I mean, you get screwed because they might not do anything. So we found some in England and Australia and California and Chicago. I found about 8 or 9. And so we got some weird music license songs through music licensing. There was one. It was in Italy. Remember that one, Jack? I think it was in Michigan.
It was a government commercial.
It was a government commercial for Italy, promoting like grants for kids to go to college or something.
It's for women to go to college.
For women to go to college. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It was bizarre. It was a bizarre.
Like right off the top, you got $3,000. I go, hey, that's not bad.
Yeah.
So we found other things, and over time, Jack's songs have been probably on over 70 and 70 TV shows, and he's had some commercials, a couple of movies. He had one was in a porn movie, which we had no control.
Yep. There's like a glorified thing out here in Portland and Seattle called Hump Fest, and it got into it, and it was super bizarre.
There. Yeah.
It was it was a song I wrote when I was like 17, so also really weird.
Yeah.
Well, in Portland, Hump Fest isn't a surprise, since they had it. I remember when you guys were getting married, we went outside the restaurant, and there's the naked bike riders.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I like it here.
I've done it. I can't believe I've done it, but I've done it.
You told me about that. I was not very thrilled.
Peer pressure. Stay out of it. I know you're in college.
As far as getting back to your question about money, I really wanted to try to pursue as much as we can through music licensing, and we still are. And we just had a Jack actually did some other new songs on his own, pretty much on your own, Jack, right? I mean, you wrote, it's called Wellesley, and he wrote a few songs, and I sent it off over to Crucial, and they accepted one of them. It's very hard to get accepted, like 95% get rejected. And so we're in the process of getting that out there too. But I mean, I guess for me, I'm still very bullish about music licensing. And what I would give advice to bands is that, I mean, it's nice to be on Spotify and get in all this extra stuff, but you got to have at least one songwriter in the group. You got to have someone who can write songs. I mean, if you want to get some money, you got to have someone. And if you can't write a song, you better hook up with someone that can and write good songs, And I remember in college when I took a writing class, and I wanted to become a better writer, the professor said, you know how you become a better writer? And I go, well, how? And he goes, you practice. You keep writing and writing and writing. That's what Jack has done. Jack's written well over 100 songs, I can imagine. And he used to do this contest, and I'll be quiet here in a minute. Yeah. He had these other musicians who are some very, very skilled musicians in LA, at least one of them I know pretty well, where they would have a contest that's 12 hours or 8 hours, where you write 20 songs in 12 hours. You have to write it and record it, 20 songs in 12 hours. And that's they all listen to their songs after. It's crazy.
One thing, staying on the business side, in order to get, kind of like, now that, like, say the record deal isn't there, do you then, as like a business entity, go to Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, and you have to go and negotiate like separate deals with each of them, and then they have kind of a revenue sharing model?
You go through a third party that has all these relationships.
Okay.
So it's essentially the same way we do the podcast, Pat. So it's
okay.
RSS is essentially the same thing as like a third party for.
Got it.
Yeah.
I remember there was like a Netflix. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was a Netflix, like a mini series about the rise of Spotify. Because they came out of Sweden, I think it was. But the whole thing was they started a thing that they wanted it to be free, and it was like, kind of terrifying, because excuse me, how will musicians earn a living? They're basically, they were committed to just putting everything out there and kind of taking all that intellectual capital away from those who created it. And I know they obviously didn't do that, but I guess kind of a long way of asking is like Spotify and Pandora, all Apple those are all just heavily weighted to their platforms. Yes, they're, like the musicians don't really get like fairly compensated. I mean, what are
You get
your
a cut.
thoughts?
I mean, you get a cut. It's not bad. It's just you got to
Yeah,
have. You got to get.
I mean, it destroyed the market. I mean,
got it. Okay. Yeah,
100%. Like there's no way you can, as a musician, defend Spotify.
right.
Like it's like there, what is basically a CD these days is like a business card. And
Mhm.
like the way you, if someone buys a CD, this is just them saying like, please keep going. This is not like, they're not going to listen to it there. They're going to go on Spotify. I mean, the reality is like when people go to shows, like buying shirts are way more appropriate these days, or like buying vinyl for collecting. Like the Spotify has it's unfortunate because I use it and I need I listen to music and I
Right.
love it, but I'm also like it's the thing that has sunk the ability um
Be a
to
small.
be yeah or you're so small in this world, like, and
Right.
anyone, like we were, and when I was in high school we started getting garage bands installed on our goofy little Apple computers, and like people started, like, the rise of garage band and these in-home studios, just basically anyone can make songs. So it's not saying that everyone's a good songwriter, but I just think saturation happened fast, and it's to the point where how is there four Wellsies on Spotify? You know, like how is there, like
Right.
it's
Right.
just it's so much saturation that like there's no way to stand out. Like even some bands that are huge are small. It's confusing.
Mhm.
I don't know how it works exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and one thing too is I think if I remember correctly, originally Spotify wanted to essentially be kind of like almost like a YouTube where it was for small creators. Like, oh, put small creators on here and they can make money through ads and stuff like that. But it kind of just became like the all like it be all end all kind of thing, like, where you no longer, because on Apple, on iPods, you buy the song or buy the album. You didn't stream it. That wasn't a thing. But then all of a sudden now if you go on Apple Music, not a single person buys a song off Apple Music. It's all just streaming. And that's it. It kind of it started out as one thing, became another thing, and now it's just kind of you got to live with it. It's not going away.
Yep.
Well, that's a good kind of crossover to that point, like call it a year ago. It's more than that, Jack, that you decided, okay, I'm gonna put the music, off to the side and do a career pivot and kind
Yeah.
of tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, all the while of doing this music in Portland, I had been working, full time in a different job to pay rent and, live. And during the pandemic, I was promoted to like the general manager of this, like, pretty much one of the most famous restaurants in Portland. Super busy, super intense. The change, like, I went from like kind of, one foot in the door, one foot out the door, because I was touring with music and kind of working at Cuero and like but I was, I saw that restaurant as a food cart, and it moved all the way up to a brick and mortar. And then I was involved in like the bar program, the planning, the training of all the
Hey,
like,
you were on Flavortown, no
yeah,
less.
we were on Flavor Town. I got to meet Guy.
Oh,
Sure.
Um, and like it was just it was a whirlwind, but like we were a family, and I learned a ton about management and training and blah blah blah. But that all kind of started happening during the pandemic, and it just kind of, it was a month before the pandemic started, and I said to my all my bands, as in I was in four bands at the time, and I go, hey guys, I think I need a little break. I think I need a month off, is what I
Yeah.
said. I think I need a month off, no rehearsals. And everyone's like, totally fine. Cut to 3 years later, like, and it was, I think my wife and I, Mel, were spearheading those willows for so long. Our relationship needed a break from it. I needed to just, I realized it just wasn't going to be the lucrative thing I wanted it to be. It wasn't going to be the career that I could settle down with. Like it just, I wanted to get back to loving it and not looking at it as a business entity, and more of like a thing that relaxes me and makes me feel whole. So we decided to have a baby. And nothing motivates you more than to have a child and want to, provide, I think. And so I realized the restaurant was a young person's business, and everybody was. I mean, I'm not old. I'm like 33, but like everybody was like 25 and could just like stay up till 1 a.m. and party and stuff. And I was like backing away from that, and so I was like, I need to have a stable 9 to 5 office job, and I don't know. It was a source of a little bit of luck, but a little bit of just the drummer that was in my band before the pandemic was like, hey, I work at this design consultancy. They're hiring a project manager, and he got me in the door. And this, and it was just, I got into the interview, which is kind of my comfort zone, and started basically auditioning in my way, kind of faking it till I made it. Like my resume was at this time Jamba Juice manager and Guero manager, and then
right,
and then
and musician,
songwriter,
yeah,
and songwriter. So I mean, those things. Luckily, I have family and friends who help me like shape it in a way to be like, okay, well, being in a band is like being an event manager for everything, and advertising and marketing, PR, all that's wrapped in. So if you can word it that way and make it kind of seem, structured and make sense, that's one way. And then general management of a restaurant has to do a lot with budgets and numbers and labor and ordering product, operations, blah blah blah. So anyways,
HR
I just kind of BS my way through the project management
the technical
interview.
term, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I believed I could do a good job. It was kind of like more get through it, got the job, loved it for a while, and then they cut 80% of the staff. So I just decided that place wasn't right for me. So now I'm on another pivot. We'll see what. But all the while I'm playing a show tonight.
Oh,
and
okay.
What are you playing, Jack? What are you doing?
I'm doing this like open mic night thing, but it's just with a bunch of friends that invited me to. They want me to play, so I'm gonna play some songs.
Or music?
Music.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so
But
music's always going to be with you, right? It's not like it's going away. And do you have plans to record anytime soon?
Yeah, I have a song I'm sitting on that I'm going to release soon, and I'm doing all the recording and editing myself these days because for one, don't see the need to go into these studios anymore. I've learned a lot over the pandemic from doing a podcast. Actually, I did this podcast where I interviewed musicians who worked in the service industry, and kind of this whole thing that was on
career sandwich, right?
Career sandwich, and I learned a lot about like audio, and so yeah, now I'm kind of doing my own thing, and like my dad said, they actually accepted one of my songs at that licensing company, which was kind of a big deal for me because it's the first one I've ever produced and did my own thing that got picked up. So
what type of audio editing software do you use like currently for that, like when you edit like your songs and stuff like that?
Funny enough, I'm using GarageBand. I am like I am the person who's just, I've grown very used to it. I have 2 microphones and I know exactly what they're capable of. I've had them for like 10 years, and it doesn't really matter at that point. If you know your gear, then it's just kind of it's so similar to Logic. So I've used Logic before, but I mostly Logic or GarageBand.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am with iMovie, because like iMovie is like so much simpler, but it's like what I'm used to, and I don't want to go. I know how to use Premiere, I just don't, because it takes forever.
I totally get it. Yeah, I mean, it's like Adobe versus Canva in the modern context too. Like people are either Photoshop people and they're ride or die, or now Canva is just like, why not?
Yeah. Here, there's after this podcast, young Jason, our producer, he's now, he's going over to the pawn shop and going to get a guitar, and he wants to launch a music career. So he's going to graduate from Lion, or we'll all come and get him and kill him. But he graduates from Lion, and now he wants to launch into a music career. What advice, Jack, would you give young Jayson?
Don't go looking for the likes.
Mhm.
Do it because you love it, and find people who love it and grow with them. Don't worry so much about social media. I think everybody thinks that's just the route, and everyone will tell you, like, just get a presence going, or meet some people who just ask you to play a show with them. Like, I think anyone who wants to get into the scene should just go to shows, show up. Whatever you're into, go to those shows. You'll meet a million people. It's just so much more important than this false sense of reality of 20 likes on a reel. Like, who cares? So yeah.
I would also recommend 4 chords: C, A minor, F, G7.
There you go. And
Those
then
are the 4 chords I taught Jack, and after that, I was done.
music history. Well, real good. Well, thank you both. Dave, you just stay cool in incredibly sunny Florida, and Jack, what do they say in Portland? Stay weird. I guess that's
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I'd say stay dry.
I got I got one more thing I want to ask before we
Yeah, fire
before we
away.
go. Okay. So now that AI is becoming the way it is, I always this is the thing I like to bring up. So as a musician, and you see like the AI music coming out with like the president singing stuff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on that towards the industry? Like, do you see there being a problem in the future where people's voices are being taken like completely illegally to be used for songs and stuff like that? Or like, what is your opinion on that? I just kind of wanted to pick your brain on that.
Yeah, totally. I have asked ChatGPT to write me a song based off these parameters that I created off of a song I already wrote. And it's called My Bones. It hasn't come out yet, but I told it to, hey, write this song called My Bones. It's about a 33-year-old who has anxiety and this and blah, blah, blah. And gave it all these parameters, had it write it. It was shit. So what I will say, it was, I don't know if you guys can swear. It was not good. What I'm saying, I think that AI is relevant and it matters, and it using other people's voices that we're familiar with to create new content or whatever, or for profit, is nothing that hasn't been done before. If you think about sampled music, you think about any EDM artists, they're all using samples and songs that things have already happened. Like right now, there's like that song on the radio. I can't believe it's on the radio. It's like the Tracy Chapman song, or maybe that's right. It's like, maybe you drive a fast car.
Fast car,
but
yeah.
it's like some like country dude singing it, and it's no different than the original. I'm like, what's going on here? But I guess my point is that let it go, let it happen. If they start making profit off of like something sounding like Snoop Dogg, I mean, he can just sue them. And yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's, to me, this is the world. I've been, being a musician is consistently having to adapt, and being in this world of technology is consistently having to adapt. But I started using ChatGPT and AI stuff immediately as soon as it came out, because I'm like, I need to understand this stuff, because if it's going to become part of our lives, it's just like Spotify. It's this next thing. So I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to observe it and do what I do. And if, imitation is the biggest, biggest form of flattery. So if AI wants to sound like me, congratulations. Try your best.
There you go. All right. A jackpot, yes, as they would call it. Yeah. Well, Jack and Dave, thank you both. And that'll wrap up another episode of Career Pathways. And Jayson and I will be back in a moment with just a little summary about the show. Thanks again. Okay, Jayson, your thoughts?
My thoughts on it was really interesting. One of the biggest things that he brought up that I thought was really like a good thing that people could take away from this, especially, is making connections, because people forget about this, that even though we live in 2023 where, you know, you got this thing at you at all times, you know, and you're constantly over there, that's not making a real connection. Having people on, you know, social media or something like that, he's right, is not connections. I think making real connections is the best way to, like he said, it wasn't even just for his music. He was getting other jobs because of it, you know, through those connections that he had. So I think if people need to take one thing away from today, it's that they need to make connections in the real world, because they will benefit you in every walk of life.
Yeah. And there's a couple things, you know, and obviously I'm, you know, Jack's uncle, so I kind of know his story, you know, very deeply, and the things that you find in, you know, Jayson, you saw meeting him, is that how grounded he is. And I remember when he was young and they went to Los Angeles, and
You were
you know, and I was so worried for him, because you know, that, you know, a lot of that auditioning, you're facing rejection at an early age, and would it leave any scars? And his resilience and positivity that came through that really has just been so, you know, so impressive, because it just kind of carried him through, you know, all the other ups and downs that he's had in life, and he has just a tremendous perspective on it. The other thing that, you know, that as far as Jack as an artist, you know, that he developed his own voice, you know, his own craft, and he never went and made all these crazy pivots, like, oh wow, now it's, you know, it's dance music, I got to go and you know, start recording dance, or now it's this, or now it's that.
He wasn't trying to follow trends. He was trying to
he had better, you know, good or bad, it didn't, you know, it was like an authenticity that here, you know, my music's unique. He kind of was talking about how at one time everything fell under indie, so it was a real broad category that allowed artists to be themselves, and he's stuck with that. And so whether it's commercial success, not commercial success, you know, at least he, you know, stayed authentic as an artist.
Yeah, and I think being a musician's like one of those careers, like being an athlete. You know, it's not like every single person's going to be able to do it, and not every single person's going to have success. You know, there's always going to be a couple people who want to do it, and you won't get the opportunity to. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't try, and that's the big thing. Is just because you fail, like with his acting, you know, he didn't fail, but, you know, getting rejected, you know, some people, they'd just be like, oh, I'm done, I'm not worth it, you know, I don't have any, I'm talentless, I don't have anything. But no, like, having a positive mindset and getting through it, I mean, that switching careers like that is tough to begin with, and then switching from one walk of life where it's like, oh, being an actor, you know, to being a musician, that's something like, those are like being an athlete, it's like, wow, you know, you never know if you're going to get it or not, you know?
Well, and you know, he's very modest, so he doesn't talk up the success that he has had in, you know, with those Willows, and they've made fantastic music. By the way, you know, that Jack's song "No More" is what we use for the lead-in to our podcast and for all transitions. Anyone who wants to listen to Jack and his wife Mel's band Those Willows, please go, you know, to whatever streaming service that you use, whether it's Spotify or Pandora, Apple, whatever, and listen to it. You're going to be incredibly impressed, and I think that's kind of you know, since I'm bragging on him in a big way, being his uncle, but, you know, as far as that humility is really impressive, because, you know, he won't talk up all the accomplishments that he's had and all the accomplishments that he's going to have in the future. You know, you know, Jack's a smart, creative mind, and there's going to be a lot of promising things ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just, he was just, it was a great opportunity to have on the show. and also like just getting to have that experience of like somebody who's like, you know, been there, done that type of thing, that would
Right.
definitely be really, really, really beneficial to people in general.
Good deal. Well, with that, Jason and I are going to wrap up another episode of Career Pathways. Thank you for listening to us. Please, thank you for listening to us. Thanks a lot.
This broadcast is sponsored in part by Lyon College and also sponsored in part by KILT Radio.